in and around boxing. So just start, can you introduce yourself and your role?
I'm Greg Meehan. I'm the founder of Rise Mindset Mentors and Coaching for Mindset Performance for Athletes. And I'm also the head of Mindset and Psychology Performance at Matchroom Boxing.
In terms of your mindset role with fighters, what's your sort of day-to-day role in regards to them, either at Matchroom or just in general to normal athletes?
So with boxers, I do work with other boxers outside of Matchroom as well. That's just an agreement I've got with them to work with a certain amount of fighters. On a day-to-day basis, I would say, depending on where they're at in their camp. So if a fighter's starting out in his camp or she's starting out in her camp, I would probably speak to him once a week, maybe two times a week. As we get a bit deeper in, it becomes more day-to-day stuff, going over everything from nerve control, breath work to enhance physical performance as well as mental performance, going over sleep patterns in case they struggle to sleep, because sometimes they can do a lot of training and there's a lot of stress hormones in their body and adrenaline, and sometimes they can struggle to sleep. Closer into fight time, different types of nerves kick in, and then there's also sleep patterns to be changed then, because they're going to perform later in the evening as well, fighting. So there's always a lot to do.
You first worked with John Ryder for his fight with Canelo, am I right? How did this come about?
I actually started off when I started with Rise was in football to start with, just dealing with footballers. I've known John Ryder for a long time, and I've known the guys at the Matchroom Boxing gym, Tony Sims, for a long time as well. And I've been working in the background, doing my football stuff. And then John come to me and said, potentially could have a fight with Canelo before it was done. And he said, I just want to make sure that, everything's in place in terms of covering every base that I can to give the best performance I can. So it was more him trying to prevent anything changing how he was thinking and his mindset because of the magnitude of the fight, and fighting someone he was a fan of as well. So he come to me and we started working about 20 weeks out from the fight, and then it got announced, and then he went into deep camp with the training, etc.
What type of things did you work on with John to sort of prepare him? As you said, it's just more a mindset thing in terms of like keeping the same mindset he had for the rest of the fights, because it was such a big one. But what other little type of things did you work on with him?
The main thing with John was to try and keep him present on fight week, which was important, because he found in his fight before against Zach Parker that in the few days building up to it, and especially in the changing rooms or on the ring walk, he didn't really feel present. He really didn't feel completely there. Once the bell went, he was fine, and that's the case for most boxers. Once the bell goes, they're fine. They do what they do. And every fighter really has a good level of mindset anyway. It's just they work with me to help unlock other parts, deeper parts to it, to go another level. And for John, we worked on trying to keep him present more. We worked on a lot of breath work to help him with that, and we also worked on a lot of visualization for him to keep him present and to not let anything penetrate his focus when he was in change rooms, etc.
You said on the website that you started as a bond broker. How
That's right.
do you take such a big career switch necessarily? How did that come about, and how did you do it?
I was a bond broker for 20 years. After about 10 years, I went for my own life change. I wanted to level up, and I changed a lot of things, and I learned a lot about myself. And then I decided to go on a bit of a learning journey about the human brain and high performance. Working in the city as a bond broker is very high pressured, and it's very demanding, and it's very high performance related. So there are three things a professional athlete would have also, and they do come from the same part of the brain. So it was, once I'd learned for a number of years about the brain and how it worked and how breathing can control certain elements of our emotions, and also sleep, the importance of sleep. A lot of people, you'll hear a lot of like coaches say that you need 8 hours sleep to recover, but there's so much more to it than that, and what it actually does for the brain as well as the body. But so the initial transition from my day-to-day job was slightly different in terms of, instead of speaking to bank traders about trades, I was explaining to athletes about why and how their brain can perform better. So I sort of understood it before, if that makes sense, from my job. So it was a big transition, but a comfortable one.
Yeah, a lot more transferable skills than people would probably think.
Exactly, yeah. A lot of people think it's a big, massive jump, but there is a lot of transferable skills involved, especially even meeting and speaking to people. You know, it's something that's very important as a bond broker. And so meeting and speaking to new people was quite comfortable for me. And then, yeah, understanding about how pressure works and how to get the best out of someone in high performance. So, yeah, he's transferring that into everyday life of athletes.
You said you're now at Matchroom, head of mindset and psychology at Matchroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what did the first conversation go like to get on board with the team, and who was it with?
I started speaking to obviously working with John Ryder, and then I went down to Mexico for the fight week with John as well. And I think everyone sort of see the positive effects it had on John. He was a different type of fighter fight week, you know, very, very tuned in, very focused. And that's a lot to do with him as well. I would say that some of the work we've done helped, but it's always down to the athlete. And then after that, you know, a few conversations with Tony Sims, who runs the Matchroom Boxing gym, and his son, Charlie Sims, who's a manager for most of the fighters there. And he suggested maybe something I could do to work with more of their fighters. So that's when I crossed into that, started working with more of their fighters, and working with other fighters under Matchroom and other promotion groups as well. But initially it was through Tony and Charlie Sims.
In terms of more towards the mental health side of things, because that's what our project's on.
Yeah.
How important, especially in boxing and in athletes in general, is it to take care of your mental health alongside obviously your physical as well?
Oh, I think it's the main thing. 100% is the main thing, and I actually call it mental fitness. I find, you know, mental health. Everybody struggles with some element of mental health, right? I mean, we'd be lying if we said we didn't. You know, as a mindset coach, I'll be lying if I said I didn't get affected in some ways of life for a mental health aspect. The problem with the phrase mental health is everyone assumes it's a really bad thing, you know, and there is bad elements to it. But at the same time, it's something that we all live with, you know, and learn about. The difference between, you know, the day-to-day of having mental health problems and then being a fighter and having to get into the ring, risk your life anyway, if you're not in the right mental state, then it's not, you know, you're not going to be going in there. I like to call it mental fitness because mental health sounds like a bad word, like I said, and it's not a bad word. It's like if it was made softer, a lot more people would be more open to talking about it. But there's levels to mental health, you know, and it can come from, if we use a sports person as an example, an athlete could come to me and say, I'm really feeling nervous about this. I'm not sure if I can do it. Mate, like imposter syndrome, which is another word that is crazy because everyone gets imposter syndrome, but syndrome sounds like it's some sort of deeper disease, but it's like it should be imposter progress because when we feel it just means we're progressing in life, you know, and we all get that no matter what we do for a living. So we get them feelings of butterflies and nervousness, you know, and people associate that with different things, but that can move on to different levels of mental fitness, you know, and for athletes, a lot of the time they'll say to me, oh, I just get really bad anxiety before an event. And a lot of the time it is excitement. The world tells them that if you feel something in your stomach that makes you feel uncomfortable, it's anxiety. Anxiety is a real thing. It's very powerful, you know, and a lot of people suffer with it very badly. But some people are very quick to identify that they suffer with anxiety when a lot of the time they're actually got these feelings because of doing something that they love. And they're also doing something that means they're doing an extra level to it. So for a fighter who's going to fight for a world title that's never fought for a world title before, that feeling is that they have would be maybe like an excitement feeling. But there are people that do generally suffer with bad anxiety problems, and in sport especially, it's difficult for them to talk about because they're all meant to be mentally strong. But if it's not looked after or trained on how to contain it, it will lead to deeper types of mental health and depressions, because people will send themselves into a deeper place.
And in terms of that, like, what are some of the pitfalls that you've seen some fighters that you've worked with sort of fall into? Some of the common mistakes that they've made or issues that they've necessarily had?
I think sometimes if a fighter does get develops what they believe to be anxiety, it can lead on to something else, and it can lead to them believing they shouldn't be in the position they are, and then it can lead to them not training as well as they can because they don't believe they can actually win. And that goes for a lot of all sports. A lot of people can be tricked by their own brain into thinking they're not worthy of where they should be, and then their level of training will go down. And mostly because of the overthinking they're doing and the energy draining it's doing mentally to them, they'll get, they can develop mental fatigue, and that is something that will then filter down to the body, and then they won't be able to train as hard as they normally train. And so it all, everyone says it all starts in the mind. It literally does all start in the mind, and it's just about learning how to control that. But yeah, I have seen people, unfortunately, let their emotions take control of them, and then it will just hinder their performance. It's quite common, to be honest, and that's why it's good there's people like me, and there's more people like me coming through. So it's a good thing for the athletes.
And then what sort of methods have you found that have been quite successful in your line of business in terms of boxing compared to maybe other sports?
I would say the breathwork techniques, I think, because it's quite new to boxing. I'm sure there's boxers that have been doing types of breathwork techniques for a long time, but it's beginning to become a bit more mainstream in boxing. Other sports are always a little bit ahead of boxing anyway. But I do think that because boxing's a tough man type sport, it's always been regarded as that. It's to suggest to oh, I feel a bit nervous, I will then go and have a breathwork session with someone. It used to be a little bit like, sounds a bit strange, and not something they'd really want to do because of maybe what people might think. But there's a lot of top boxers now, that especially ones I work with, they get a lot out of the breath work. They're very open to it and they talk about it a lot. And I feel a lot of people think it's just to keep someone calm, and a lot of it is it's to help regulate nervous systems, so you can control how you're feeling and keep that anxiety nerve balance in the right place. It also helps the style that I teach them a lot as well. It also helps them to release more oxygen into their bloodstream. So they'll get 20 to 30% more oxygen release and their performance will be better. And look, most of the fighters I work with, each time we do a camp, they get PBs in their sprinting times, their running times, it's all, and their recovery times in between rounds. And some of the fighters, I've even changed the way they breathe in between rounds to recover quicker. And then I'd never teach a fighter, or I would never say to a fighter how they should breathe in a fight. That's not something I would do. But a lot of them, from doing intensive work with me, will develop their own new way of breathing from their own natural respiratory system. But that's been one of the biggest benefits I've seen for fighters with me, especially.
You also said you were working in the Matchroom gym. Conor Benn has gone through quite a mental tough period in the last sort of 6 months to a year nearly. Have you worked much with him throughout this period, or are you more towards the fighters that are a bit more active at the moment, or have you spoken to him and worked with him much?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've worked with him on his breath work. That's one of the main things I do with him, and he's a very mentally strong young man anyway, and he's coming through a tough time, and a lot of that's to do with his own, his own determination and willpower, and the breath work I've been teaching him I would say, has helped with that as well, but also a lot to do with his physical performance on the breath work side. I would say, but I've worked with him for a while with the breath work. Even when fighters are in and out of camp, they still need to keep their breath work up. it's like they're training as well, because your respiratory system will slow down if it's not being used properly. And so it's the same as their fighting camp. So a lot of people would work in and out of camp with me. Yeah, same for him.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's all I need. Yeah, perfect. I see you've got the George Groves Boxing Club thing in the background.
Yeah, my wife got it printed up for me and framed. It was the first podcast that I'd done regarding boxing.
That's
with
the
George.
first time I heard about you. To be fair, was through them and through that podcast, and then obviously your work with John Ryder, and then did more research, and then
it's become. I've done it for about 3 years, but it's started to come more to light now, because people are more, the people I worked with before like to sort of keep things to themselves. So a lot of the fighters are very open about it, and they're like, yeah, I'll talk to someone when I need to, you know, and that's helping. Some people like John Ryder and Cyrus Pattinson, who are very big on talking about working with mindset coaches, especially working with me. And a lot of the youngsters are like coming to me and saying, I'm not sure what I need to do, but I want to have you in my team. And then, you know, and some people come for certain reasons, and some people come because they want to prevent it. But yeah, no, that was the them guys are really, really good guys, and it was a great opportunity to do that with them. But yeah, it's good to see that these the fighters are talking more about it in the public eye, because it's more than just mental fitness. There's a lot of other stuff to it, like their sleep and breathing, etc.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of the old guard is sort of being pushed out on in terms of their mindset, in terms of mental fitness and mental health. It's nice to see that a lot of the younger lads are talking a lot more about it, and even in different sports. I know Paddy Pimblett's quite a strong believer in speaking out, and he spoke out a few times. And it's nice to see that a lot of people are not necessarily scared of talking about it anymore, and scared to see what the action would be.
Yeah, there's quite a few Premier League footballers are speaking about it as well now. I see one of the Chelsea and England players, I forget his name. He spoke about it recently, about he speaks to somebody and it helps him, you know, and it's a strength. It's not a weakness. It's total strength. A weakness is letting it to keep beating you down and not doing anything about it. You know, it's when people do something about it, it shows strength. And so it's good when you have them types of people speaking about it as well, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's the same as physical fitness, isn't it? Like, you've both got to train both, otherwise one without the others essentially useless.
Yeah. I see it a lot when I go into the different boxing gyms or to the football team training grounds that I work with, and I see athletes coming out, and I do a lot of body language studying as well. So it's, you know, I can see straight away, and you know who's got something on their mind and who hasn't, because they just don't perform as well as they can, you know. And I'm sure there are some athletes that still perform when, you know, there's stuff going on in their life, but it's when the stuff actually starts to get deep ingrained in them that it starts to hinder their performance. And it can be dangerous. It can be dangerous for athletes to perform under with the wrong mindset. I mean, I would always recommend a fighter, if I was working with them and I really felt that they wasn't right for the fight, I would recommend that they pulled out of a fight for sure, because it's too dangerous to. You have to go all in, you know. And it's a fine line, like you said about the old guard, because there is an element of that you still need. You still need that, well, I'm going to go in there and it's on. You need that motivation type thing, you know, and that's where some of my work comes into that as well, you know, trying to G up the fighters a little bit. But they do have, most of them have really good trainers as well who do that for them as well. So it's that balance that they get. They have to get the balance right, because you can't go, you know, full in on just everything mindset, because then you might lose that physical beast as such. You know, you need a bit of all of it, and it's all important as each other for sure.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Greg. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, you're welcome, and I wish you all the best for you finishing university and whatever you're going to do. I'm sure you do great things.
Thank you very much.
Just reach out if you need anything else.
I'll
be happy.
I'm hoping this isn't the last time I talk to you. Definitely.
I'm sure it won't be.
Thank you very much.